Have you ever wondered if Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos are the richest people in history? Well, today we're going to find out by comparing them to the kings of France. We're going on a 1400-year journey to see which French monarchs were richer in terms of power and resources than any modern billionaire. We'll be looking at their total economic influence, not just cash in the bank. So, who makes the list? Let's dive in. Our journey begins with the Carolingians, and the most famous of them all, Charlemagne. Was he richer than a modern billionaire? An emphatic yes. This man ruled a vast empire that covered nearly a third of Western Europe. He didn't just have a salary, he commanded the entire national revenue directly. His personal wealth came from immense land holdings, tribute from conquered peoples, and the spoils of war. Historians often try to put a number on this, and while it's tricky, his economic power is estimated to be in the range of $1 to $3 trillion in today's money. That's not cash, but the total value of the resources he controlled. Next up, his grandson, Charles the Bald, richer than a billionaire. Yes, again. While he didn't rule as vast an empire as Charlemagne, he was the king of West Francia, the precursor to modern France. He had personal control over huge royal estates and their revenues. His wealth wasn't on Charlemagne's scale, but it was still far beyond anything a modern billionaire could dream of controlling personally. And what about Charlemagne's father, Pepin the Short? He also gets a probable yes. He was the one who really consolidated the royal estates, laying the groundwork for his son's immense power. The sheer scale of the resources under his direct command places him well above our billionaire benchmark. Now, let's move to the Capetian dynasty. Here's a surprise: for a long time, the early Capetian kings were actually not that rich. Their personal royal domain was tiny, often just the area around Paris, so, for the first few centuries of their rule, none of them were richer than a modern billionaire. They were powerful politically, but their personal wealth was limited compared to the great nobles of their time. Things start to change with the House of Valois. Let's look at Charles V, known as the Wise. Was he richer than a billionaire? A clear yes. He came to power during the 100 Years' War and was a genius at administration. He completely rebuilt the royal finances, expanded the royal domain, and personally controlled massive estates. His effective economic power was staggering, easily surpassing any modern billionaire. Then we have Louis XI. Another definite yes. This king was all about centralization. He systematically broke the power of the great nobles, seizing their lands and wealth for the crown. He centralized taxation, and under his rule, the royal treasury ballooned. In terms of state revenue and land control, he was in a league of his own, far wealthier than any individual is today. And who could forget Francis I, the great patron of the Renaissance in France? Was he richer than a billionaire? Absolutely, yes. He commanded gigantic revenues, partly from the efficient tax system his predecessors built. The royal domain expanded even further under his reign. If you calculate his equivalent economic influence, he'd be comfortably in the high trillionaire range. He wasn't just a king, he was the economic center of his entire nation. Now we enter the era of the House of Bourbon, starting with Henry IV. Was he richer than a billionaire? This one is borderline, but we'll give it a probable yes. After the brutal wars of religion, France was in shambles. Henry IV and his minister, the Duke of Sully, enacted brilliant reforms that dramatically raised royal income. He became one of the richest rulers in Europe, and his personal control over this revitalized economy likely puts him just over the billionaire line. His successor, Louis XIII, is an interesting case. Was he richer than a modern billionaire? We're going to say nitrogen monoxide. While the French state was incredibly powerful under the guidance of Cardinal Richelieu, that power was becoming more institutional. The wealth was state-run, not personally held by the king in the same way as his predecessors. Louis XIII was immensely privileged, but his personal economic footprint doesn't quite match up to the titans of old, or the billionaires of today. But then we get to his son, Louis XIV, the Sun King, richer than a modern billionaire? Yes, 1,000 times. Yes, he is easily one of the richest human beings in all of history. He controlled somewhere between 20 to 30% of France's entire economy personally. The sheer scale is mind-boggling. Think of the Palace of Versailles. That was his personal project. He had colonial revenues pouring in from around the globe and controlled a massive share of global trade. Historians estimate his total economic power was equivalent to somewhere between $3 and $5 trillion today. He is consistently listed among the wealthiest individuals who ever lived. After the Sun King, his great-grandson Louis XV took the throne, richer than a billionaire? Yes, he inherited the immense system of wealth and power built by Louis XIV. The combination of personal landholdings, state revenues, and colonial income meant he continued to command resources on a scale that dwarfs modern billionaires. While his reign saw challenges, his personal and state-controlled wealth remained astronomical. What about the last Bourbon king of the old regime, Louis XVI? This is a tricky one, so we'll say borderline yes. On paper, he was still technically the master of this incredibly wealthy system. He had resources that were, in theory, far beyond any modern billionaire. However, France was lurching towards a catastrophic financial crisis and revolution. So his effective power to use that wealth was severely reduced. In terms of adjusted resources, he was still above the billionaire level, but the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. After the French Revolution, the monarchy was eventually restored. But were Louis XVIII and Charles X richer than modern billionaires? A clear no, the post-revolution monarchy was a shadow of its former self. Power was shared with the parliament, and the king's personal wealth, while significant, was limited. They were constitutional monarchs, not absolute rulers with an entire nation's economy as their personal piggy bank. The same goes for the next monarch, Louis Philippe I from the House of Orleans. The citizen king, was he richer than a modern billionaire? Again, no. He was known to be a shrewd businessman and was personally very rich, with vast family holdings. But his wealth was in the hundreds of millions, perhaps scratching $1 billion in today's terms. It was nowhere near the top modern billionaires, and certainly not in the hyper-wealthy ruler category of his ancestors. Finally, we arrive at the Bonapartes, and what does start with Napoleon I? Was he richer than a modern billionaire? Yes, and he joins the ranks of the wealthiest rulers in history. Napoleon didn't inherit his wealth, he seized it. Through conquest, he personally controlled the revenues of not just France, but most of continental Europe. He looted art, extorted tribute, and managed economies on a continental scale. His historic economic power is estimated to be in the $2 to $3 trillion equivalent range. An astonishing figure for a self-made emperor. His son, Napoleon II, is a tragic figure, richer than a billionaire? No, he was named King of Rome as an infant and died in his early 20s. He never ruled and never had the chance to accumulate any personal wealth on a major scale. Our final monarch is Napoleon III, the nephew of the great Napoleon. Was he richer than a billionaire? We'll call this one a borderline yes. He ruled during a period of massive industrialization in France. He had immense personal holdings, invested heavily in railways, and profited from colonial expansion. His personal wealth and influence were vast, making him comparable to some of the top modern billionaires, especially when you factor in the economic power he wielded as head of state. He was likely the last French ruler whose total economic influence could rival the mega-rich of our own time. So there you have it, from Charlemagne to Napoleon III, a surprising number of French rulers wielded personal power and controlled resources on a scale that makes today as billionaires look almost middle class. It really shows how the nature of wealth has changed from direct control of land and people to the more abstract financial assets of today. What do you think? Were you surprised by who made the list? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more historical deep dives.